It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, wasn't it? The day I would stand before everyone I knew and pledge my love to the man I was supposed to spend forever with. I had picked the perfect dress, the flowers were arranged just so, and the venue, an oceanfront hall with towering windows and sparkling chandeliers, was nothing short of magical. It should have been my moment, my fairy tale. But that all came crashing down in an instant. As I stood at the altar, looking into Evan's eyes, I felt something shift, something cold in the air. My heart skipped a beat. Was he nervous? I couldn't tell. His lips parted, and I braced myself for the vows we'd practiced for weeks. But what came out of his mouth wasn't love. It wasn't what I had been dreaming of. "I can't marry you," he said, his voice echoing off the marble walls, loud enough for every single person in the room to hear. My breath caught in my throat. "I'm not marrying this woman. Look at her. She's enormous." I was forced into this arrangement because our families thought it would be a good business deal, but I'm not spending my life with someone who looks like this. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Every cell in my body froze. The room went silent, and in that silence, I could hear my own heartbeat, pounding harder than I thought possible. My wedding day, my moment, was turning into a nightmare. I could feel eyes on me, the whispered gasps, the phone cameras clicking away as the most humiliating moment of my life unfolded. My mother's frantic voice broke through the stunned silence, but I couldn't focus on her. I couldn't focus on anything. The tears were already blurring my vision. I thought I might collapse. I wanted to vanish, to sink into the ground and disappear. "I'm done," Evan continued, like the room full of people wasn't enough. "Find someone else to merge companies with, because I'm out of this. She's not worth my time." I felt the tears come, hot and fast, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of everyone who had come to see me fail. My mother jumped up, her voice shaking with anger, her words lost in the noise of the room. But nothing mattered. Evan was walking away. And then, just as I thought I might drown in the shame of it all, a voice cut through the tension. "Stop." One word. Deep. Commanding. The sound of it sent a shiver down my spine. My blurred vision struggled to make sense of the figure standing in the doorway. He was tall, a silhouette against the bright light pouring through the windows. My heart did something strange, something I hadn't felt in ages. It skipped a beat. Or maybe it was racing, I couldn't tell. My body froze, and all I could do was watch. He was breathtaking. A man who moved like he owned the room without trying, like he was the storm everyone else had been waiting for but hadn't even realized. He strode forward, and I swear the entire room seemed to part for him. I blinked, and suddenly, he was standing in front of me, his dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me forget how to breathe. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in the air around him. Something dangerous. Something I didn't quite understand. "Who are you?" Evan sputtered, his face twisted with confusion and anger, but this stranger didn't even look at him. His gaze never wavered from mine. "My name is Sebastian Lee," the man said, his voice low, smooth, and certain. "And I will marry her." The room was silent for what felt like an eternity. My pulse raced. What was happening? Was I dreaming? This man, this stranger, was stepping into the disaster that was my wedding. He was taking my place. No, not just my place. He was claiming me. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words didn't come out. I couldn't form a single coherent thought. My head was spinning, my heart thumping against my chest. Why? Why would he do this? "I've been watching you for 6 months, Savannah," he continued, his words slow, deliberate, as if he had all the time in the world. "Now that I have you, I'm never letting you go." His gaze never left mine, and I felt like I was drowning. Something about the way he said it, the certainty, the finality, told me this wasn't some joke or impulsive decision. He was serious. Deadly serious. And I had no idea whether I was relieved or terrified. The sound of Evan's voice broke through my haze of disbelief. "You can't just walk in here and take my bride," he shouted, his arrogance faltering under the weight of this stranger's presence. Sebastian didn't even look at him. "You made it clear that this isn't your wedding anymore," he said. I'm simply stepping in. A man in the front row. A colleague of Evan's stood up. Mr. Lee, sir, we didn't know you'd be attending. This is an honor. The crowd's murmurs filled the air as Bash turned to face me. He wiped a tear from my cheek, his touch sending an unexpected jolt of warmth through my body. I know this is strange, he said softly, his voice surprisingly gentle. But I promise you, if you let me, I will spend every day proving that you deserve so much better than him. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Why? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. He smiled, a small, mysterious smile that was almost tender. I know more than you think. You're brilliant at numbers, you volunteer at an animal shelter, and you make the best lemon cake in Miami. I've been watching you, Savannah, waiting for the right moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead, I just stood there, my body frozen by the intensity of his words. Who is this man? Why had he been watching me? And what did he want from me? I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. There was no way this could be real. Sebastian Lee stood before me, his presence commanding, his dark eyes still locked on mine with an intensity that made my heart race. The wedding hall, once filled with the whispers of my guests, had now fallen into an eerie silence. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, shallow and ragged, echoing in my ears. My mind raced as I struggled to process what was happening. Did he just say he's been watching me? My thoughts spun out of control. I wasn't sure if I should be afraid, grateful, or just completely confused. He wasn't someone I knew. He wasn't someone I had invited. But he had claimed me. He was here, in this moment, in this place, taking what was supposed to be my wedding from me. Savannah, he said my name like it was the most precious thing he'd ever uttered. His voice was smooth, dark, and rich, wrapping around me like velvet. I know this is overwhelming, but trust me, you're better off with me. I'll show you. I couldn't speak. I couldn't ask him why he was doing this, or what the hell was going on. I could only stand there, stunned, as he gently took my hand in his. His touch was warm, strong, reassuring, but in a way that made me feel both safe and completely out of my depth. The entire room had gone still, but I could feel the eyes of the guests on me. Some looked intrigued. Others seemed terrified. Was it fear or awe that made them look at him like that? I couldn't tell. Evan, who had just rejected me, stood frozen in place. His face twisted in disbelief and anger. This isn't your wedding, he spat, the venom in his words lacing every syllable. You can't just come in here and take her. I didn't know if it was his words that made my heart ache, or if it was the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. Here I was, standing in front of a man who had just humiliated me, and another who had appeared out of nowhere to claim me as his own. I turned to look at Bash, Sebastian, my mind racing. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it steady. You don't even know me. His gaze softened for a moment. Oh, I know more than you think, Savannah. I've been watching you for 6 months. I know who you are, what you do, what makes you smile. His eyes searched mine, and there was something in them, something that made my stomach flutter and my heart pound. I've seen how you care about others, how you put others before yourself. You deserve better than this. His words, so honest, so raw, struck a chord deep inside me. How could he know all of that? How could he know what I cared about, what I did on my weekends? I didn't even know who he was. You don't even know what I've been through, I said, finally finding my voice, though it was barely a whisper. You don't know what this feels like. No, he agreed quietly, his eyes darkening. But I know what you need. And I know that you deserve someone who sees you for who you are. I'm not here to take something from you, Savannah. I'm here to give you everything. I swallowed hard. My thoughts were a jumble, and I had no idea how to process this. Bash had just walked in, claimed me, and was now looking at me like I was the most important thing in the room. But everything about this felt wrong, felt impossible. I glanced around the room, my eyes meeting the faces of my guests. Most of them were watching in shock, their phones still recording, capturing this mess for the internet to feast on. The social media fallout would be unimaginable. I was just about to say something, to refuse, to run away and hide from this surreal nightmare when Bash squeezed my hand gently. He didn't pull me away, but his touch was insistent. "Trust me," he whispered, leaning in close so that only I could hear him. "Let me show you what real respect looks like. Let me show you how a woman like you deserves to be treated." The way he said it, the way his voice dipped low, filled with something I couldn't place. Was it certainty? Was it possessiveness? Made something stir deep inside me. I wanted to run away. I should have run away. But somehow, in this strange, dangerous moment, a part of me didn't want to. The ceremony was a disaster. The guests shuffled uncomfortably in their seats, and the priest looked utterly bewildered. The only sound in the hall now was the hushed murmur of voices and the occasional tap of a phone screen. "Let's get out of here," Bash said suddenly, pulling me closer. I didn't know why, but I let him. The air outside the hall was cool, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore was barely audible over the pounding of my heart. We walked in silence to the sleek black limo waiting for us, my mind still racing, still trying to understand what had just happened. Bash held the door open for me and helped me inside. The interior was luxurious, far beyond anything I had ever experienced. The leather seats were soft and cool, and the faint scent of leather and cologne filled the air. Once inside, I stared at him, feeling every inch of the distance between us. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice thick with confusion. "To a place where we can talk," he replied. His eyes never left me, studying me like I was something precious. "I'll explain everything. But for now, just breathe. You're safe with me. Safe with him." I wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I confessed, my hands trembling in my lap. "I didn't sign up for this. You're a stranger, and I don't know anything about you. I don't even know why you're doing this." His gaze softened, but his grip on my hand didn't waver. "I know it's a lot. But I've been watching you." Not in a creepy way, he added with a smile that almost made me laugh. "But I've seen you, Savannah. I've seen the way you work, the way you live your life. And I've made a decision. You deserve more than what you've been given, and I'm going to give you that." My heart twisted, my emotions a whirlwind. There was something about his confidence, about the certainty with which he spoke, that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, he was right. But could I trust him? Should I trust him? We were driving through the city now, the lights blurring by outside the windows. I couldn't stop thinking about Evan, about what had just happened. How easily he had discarded me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice quiet, more to myself than to him. "Why did you choose me?" "Because you're worth it," Bash replied without hesitation. "You're everything that Evan isn't. And more." The words hung in the air between us, as the limo sped through the city, and I wondered if I was ready for whatever was about to come next. The limo ride felt like an eternity, and yet it was over far too quickly. I still couldn't get my head around everything that had happened. The way Bash had appeared out of nowhere, the calm with which he took control of the situation, the way he looked at me, it all felt like a strange dream. I kept waiting for myself to wake up, to snap out of this insane moment. We pulled up to a mansion. I didn't know Miami had places like this. The driveway was long, lined with tall, manicured palm trees that swayed in the breeze. The house loomed ahead, a massive structure made of white stone and glass, glowing under the night sky. Everything about it screamed wealth and power, but it was more than that. It felt like a fortress. I couldn't decide whether I was terrified or intrigued. Maybe both. "Come inside," Bash said, as he opened the door and offered me his hand once again. This time, I took it without hesitation. Inside, the mansion was even more impressive. The foyer had marble floors that seemed to stretch forever, with ceilings so high they made me feel small. A giant chandelier hung above, casting a warm glow over everything. It was pristine, quiet, and it felt like it was made for someone much more important than me. But Bash fit here. He belonged in this world, a world I had never even dared to imagine. He led me through the house, his hand still holding mine, until we came to a grand living room. I stood there for a moment, just taking it all in. I felt like an intruder, like I didn't belong in a place this beautiful. You should change, Bash said, his voice smooth but firm. I had something prepared for you. I turned to him, confusion creasing my brow. For me? He nodded, his eyes not leaving mine. You don't have to worry. I've arranged everything. Before I could say anything else, a woman appeared at the doorway. She was dressed in black, her hair neatly pulled back into a bun, her expression respectful. Mrs. Chin will help you with everything you need, Bash said, turning to the woman. Please make sure she's comfortable. The woman, Mrs. Chin, nodded and gestured for me to follow her. I hesitated for a moment, then turned back to Bash. Why are you doing this? I finally asked, my voice small but desperate for an answer. His gaze softened, and for a brief moment, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't as cold and calculated as I expected. Because you deserve better than what you've had. Because I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again. I swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't need saving, but I was too tired to fight anymore. The humiliation, the pain, it was all too much. And the way he looked at me, with such certainty, made me want to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was right. Go with Mrs. Chin, Bash said, his voice quiet but insistent. We'll talk later. I nodded, unable to find the words I needed to explain the maelstrom of emotions swirling inside me. As I turned to follow Mrs. Chin, I felt his eyes on me, still heavy, still watching. And for some reason, it felt like I wasn't entirely alone anymore. Mrs. Chin led me down a long hallway, passing elegant rooms that seemed to be designed to take your breath away. Each one more stunning than the last. I felt out of place, like a fish out of water, in this world of opulence. Finally, she stopped in front of a large room at the end of the hall. This is your room for the night, she said with a soft smile. I've laid out a dress for you. The bathroom is through there if you wish to freshen up. I stood in the doorway, not sure whether to feel grateful or overwhelmed. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded and left me alone, the soft click of the door behind her echoing in the silence of the room. I stood still for a moment, looking around the spacious room. The bed was enormous, covered with soft, white linens. There were flowers, fresh ones on the nightstand, and the walls were adorned with abstract art. The entire space felt like something out of a dream. The world I had been a part of felt so far away, so insignificant now. I slowly walked over to the bathroom, where I washed my face and tried to steady my shaking hands. The reflection in the mirror was one I barely recognized. My makeup was smudged, my hair a mess from the tears I'd shed in the wedding hall. I looked like someone else. Someone who had lost control of everything. After a few minutes, I returned to the room, where a stunning emerald green dress lay on the bed. It was unlike anything I'd ever worn, tight-fitting, but elegant, with delicate lace sleeves. It was a dress that commanded attention, and it was so beautiful, I wondered if I should be worried about wearing it. But as I slipped into it, I realized that it wasn't about the dress. It was about what it represented. This world. This strange, powerful man who had stepped into my life and turned it upside down. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the dress, when there was a knock on the door. Are you ready? Bash's voice came from the other side. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what I was about to walk into. I guess so, I replied softly. The door opened, and there he was. Standing in the doorway, looking every bit the powerful man I had seen earlier. But now, there was something different about him. He wasn't just the businessman or the stranger who had walked into my wedding. There was something raw, something unspoken in his gaze that made my heart race. You look incredible, he said, his voice low, and I could hear the sincerity in it. His gaze moved from my eyes down to the dress, lingering on the curve of my body. I swallowed, feeling suddenly self-conscious. Thank you, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, closing the door behind him, and stood just a few inches away. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. The next few days passed in a blur. I stayed in the mansion, trying to settle into a reality that felt like it belonged to someone else. My mind couldn't wrap around the fact that Bash Lee, a stranger who had walked into my life, claimed me and promised to protect me, was now someone I had to figure out. I couldn't sleep well at night, my mind racing with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. Who was he really? Why had he stepped in at my wedding? Was it all just a power play, or was there something more to it? During the day, I tried to distract myself, exploring the mansion and occasionally talking to Mrs. Chin, who seemed to sense my unease, but didn't pry. The place was beautiful, more than I could ever have imagined. But no matter how stunning the view was from the living room windows or how comfortable the bed felt under the plush sheets, none of it took away the sense of unease gnawing at me. Bash hadn't left my side much. He was always there, watching, observing. His presence was like a constant pressure in the air. I could feel him even when he wasn't physically near. When he did speak to me, it was always something thoughtful, so meaning sincere. But I didn't know how much of it I could trust. I knew he wanted me to feel safe, to feel like I wasn't a burden on him. But that safety came at a price, my vulnerability. And that was the hardest part to accept. It was late in the afternoon when Bash appeared outside the study, a place I had spent most of the day, trying to sort through the mixed emotions flooding me. His tall frame cast a shadow across the doorway, and I could see the firm lines of his face from where I sat. He was watching me. "You're still here," he said, his voice smooth, with that same dark undertone that made my pulse quicken. I looked up at him, trying to gather my thoughts. "I'm not sure where else I'd go," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Bash stepped inside the room and closed the door softly behind him. The click of it seemed louder than it should have been, emphasizing the intimacy of the moment. "You can leave whenever you want," he said, his tone more serious than I expected. "This isn't about control. I'm not keeping you here. But I don't think you want to leave either." I bit my lip, unsure of how to respond. "I'm not running away, Bash. I'm just processing everything." He nodded, stepping closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "I know. But it's been days, Savannah. You don't have to keep your walls up with me. I'm not here to hurt you. I've already told you that." I exhaled slowly, standing up and turning to face him more fully. His proximity made my heart race, but I fought to keep my composure. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust someone again, especially not someone who knows everything about me but hasn't really earned the right to. Bash's eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw a hint of vulnerability in him. But that vulnerability wasn't enough to make me let my guard down completely. "I understand that," he said softly. "But I've earned your trust, haven't I? You let me take you out of that wedding. You stayed with me in this house, even when you had every right to leave." His words hit harder than I expected. I had stayed. I hadn't run, even though every part of me wanted to. And the truth was, part of me had been waiting for a sign for something to change, for something to make me feel like I wasn't completely out of control of my own life. "You've been good to me," I said quietly, my eyes locking onto his. "But I can't ignore that you're a stranger. You've been watching me for months. I don't know what that means. I don't know what your motives are." Bash reached out, his hand brushing against my cheek in a soft, reassuring touch. I shivered at the warmth of his hand against my skin, but I didn't pull away. "My motives are simple, Savannah," he said, his voice low. "I want to give you what you deserve. I want to protect you. I want to help you realize your potential. You're not just a pretty face, Savannah. You're smart, capable, strong. You've spent your life trying to please others, and that's not fair to you. You deserve someone who sees that." His words were sincere, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel the weight of them. But then my doubts crept in again. "You don't even know me," I whispered, the thought more for myself than for him. Bash's eyes softened even more, and his fingers lingered on my cheek for a beat longer than necessary. "I know you more than you think. I've watched you, yes. But it wasn't just for business. I watched you because I saw something in you that others missed. I saw someone who didn't deserve to be treated like she was invisible. I didn't know how to respond to that. I couldn't bring myself to speak for fear that I might say something I didn't mean. Instead, I just stood there, my thoughts racing. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why me? Why didn't you let someone else take care of me? You could have walked away." "I didn't walk away because I'm not that kind of man," he said, the intensity in his voice deepening. "I don't leave people behind. Especially not someone like you. I'm not perfect, Savannah. But I will never let you feel like you don't matter. It was too much. His words, the way he looked at me, it was all too much. My heart hammered in my chest, and before I knew what I was doing, I stepped toward him, closing the space between us. I don't know how to trust you, I said, my voice small, my heart thundering in my ears. But I want to. I want to believe that you're different. Bash didn't answer right away. Instead, he cupped my face with both of his hands, his touch gentle but firm. I won't hurt you, Savannah, he said quietly. And I won't let anyone else hurt you either. You have my word. In that moment, for reasons I couldn't explain, I believed him. The days that followed felt like a blur. I had spent most of my time in the mansion, trying to adjust to the strange new world Bash had pulled me into. The luxury, the quiet, the opulence, it was all too much, too fast. But Bash was constant. Always there, always steady. And slowly, I began to let my guard down. Not completely. There were still parts of me that refused to open up fully, parts of me that couldn't forget the humiliating rejection at the altar, parts of me that were terrified of trusting again. But I found myself looking at Bash differently, seeing him not just as the mysterious, dangerous man who had swept in to save me, but as someone who seemed genuinely interested in who I was. He didn't push me. He let me take my time, even when I felt like I should be pulling away, running, getting back to my life. Instead, every time I tried to put distance between us, he was there, steadily, patiently, waiting for me to come to him. I had always been the one to hide my feelings, to keep everything inside and only let others see what I wanted them to. But with Bash, there was no hiding. He saw straight through me. It was unnerving. But it was also freeing, in a way I had never expected. It was late one evening when Bash suggested we go out for a walk along the beach. We hadn't talked much that day, but I knew he could sense the restlessness in me. I agreed, not knowing what I was expecting, but needing the escape nonetheless. We stepped outside the mansion into the cool night air, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore calming my racing thoughts. I had spent so much time thinking about everything that had happened, about Evan, about the wedding, about the strange man who had walked in and taken over my life, that I hadn't had time to think about what I wanted, what I needed. Bash didn't speak at first. He simply walked beside me, his presence comforting and silent, as if he was giving me space to breathe, to think. We walked along the sand, the moonlight casting a soft glow over everything, the night quiet except for the occasional rustle of the palm trees in the breeze. Why did you really do this? I asked after a while, my voice barely above a whisper. Why me, Bash? Why did you step in when you didn't have to? He glanced over at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His gaze lingered on the horizon before he finally spoke. I've told you before, he said softly. I'm not like the other men you've known. I didn't step in because I wanted to save you from a bad situation. I stepped in because I saw someone who deserved better than she was getting. Someone who had been treated like she was invisible her whole life. I stopped walking for a moment, letting his words sink in. It wasn't what I expected him to say. He wasn't talking about some grand gesture of rescuing me. He was talking about me, about the person I was. And that made me pause. I'm not perfect, he continued, his voice steady. I don't have a clean past. I've done things I'm not proud of, things that have made me who I am. But when I saw you, Savannah, when I saw the way you were treated, the way Evan humiliated you, I knew I had to step in. You deserve someone who sees you, who doesn't just look at you and see a way to further their own agenda. His words, his honesty, hit me harder than I thought they would. They made me feel something real, something that went deeper than fear or confusion. I took a deep breath and turned to face him. You don't know me, I said, though my voice trembled. You've been watching me, yes, but you don't know what it's like to be rejected the way I have. To be treated like I'm nothing more than a business deal. I don't need someone else telling me what I'm worth. I've spent my life doing that for myself. Bash's gaze softened, and for a moment, he just looked at me as if trying to understand. I know what it's like to feel worthless, he said quietly. But you're not nothing. You've never been nothing. And I want to show you that. I shook my head, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. But I don't know how to accept this. Accept you. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore. Bash reached out and wiped the tear from my cheek gently with his thumb. His touch was light but deliberate, and it sent a jolt of warmth through me. You don't have to trust me right away, he said softly. You just have to let me show you what trust looks like. I'm not going anywhere, Savannah. I'm here. I'm not leaving you to fight this alone. But you have to let me in. His words, his touch, everything about him felt right. In that moment, I realized that he wasn't asking for anything from me. He wasn't trying to force me into anything. He was just offering me a choice to let go of the fear, to stop running from everything that had hurt me, and to finally let someone in. I took a deep breath, wiping my own tears away. The night air felt a little cooler now, but something in me was warmer. I don't know if I'm ready for this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But maybe I'll try. I'll try to trust you. Bash smiled then, a small, genuine smile that made my heart flutter. That's all I'm asking for, Savannah. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to trust that I'll be here when you need me. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The words were there, hanging in the air between us. The promise. The hope. And for the first time in days, I allowed myself to believe it. To believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. We continued walking along the beach, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the silence. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But for the first time since my wedding, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I was starting to believe that maybe I was finally finding my way back to myself. And maybe, just maybe, Bash Lee was a part of that journey. The days that followed felt like a delicate balance, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It wasn't easy. I didn't expect it to be. But slowly, I started to let Bash in. Little by little, I began to trust him, even though I wasn't sure I could trust myself. He kept his distance when I needed space, but he was always there when I reached out, always ready to listen, ready to reassure me. It was like he knew exactly when I needed him, when the weight of my emotions was too much to carry on my own. And for the first time in my life, I found myself leaning into someone, letting them take the weight from my shoulders. But that didn't mean it was easy. Trust didn't come naturally to me. I had spent my whole life building walls, guarding my heart. Bash had shattered some of them, but there were still cracks, still parts of me that I was too afraid to let him see. One afternoon, we were sitting in the large library in the mansion, the scent of leather and books filling the air. I had been reading for hours, trying to lose myself in the quiet of the room. The mansion was peaceful, but the silence was sometimes too much. It allowed my mind to wander to places I wasn't ready to face. Bash was working on his laptop at the desk, but he didn't seem focused on it. I could feel his gaze on me, steady and intense. I looked up from my book and caught him watching me, his dark eyes scanning my face with that same thoughtful expression he always wore. "What is it?" I asked, my voice low, unsure of what he was thinking. "You're still holding something back," he said, not looking up from his screen. "I can see it. You haven't let me in completely." I flinched, not because of the words themselves, but because he was right. There were parts of me I hadn't shared with him. I had opened up, sure, but I wasn't truly vulnerable with him. Not yet. "I'm trying," I said quietly, looking back down at the pages in front of me. "But it's not easy. It's not something I'm used to." He didn't respond at first, and I could feel the weight of his silence pressing down on me. I didn't want to look at him, afraid of what I might see in his eyes. Finally, he closed the laptop with a soft click and stood up. He walked over to where I was sitting, his footsteps light on the hardwood floor. When he reached me, he crouched down in front of me, so close that I could feel the heat from his body. "Savannah," he said softly, his voice full of understanding. "I'm not asking you to trust me all at once. But you can't keep shutting me out. I want to help you. I want to be the one you turn to when everything feels too much." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. The words were there, but I couldn't say them. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to be that vulnerable, how to give someone all of me without the fear of being hurt again. "Why do you want to help me?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why me? I'm not anything special." He reached out, cupping my face in his hands, his touch warm and gentle. His thumb stroked my cheek, his eyes searching mine like he was looking for something I wasn't sure I could give him. "You're everything, Savannah," he said softly, his voice filled with conviction. "You're strong and kind and smart. You've been through so much, but you're still here. That's more than most people can say. And I see you. I see who you are, not just the surface. And that's why I'm here. Because you deserve someone who sees you for everything you are, even when you can't see it yourself." The words hit me like a wave, drowning me in emotion. My heart raced, my breath shallow as I looked up at him, unsure of what to say. No one had ever spoken to me like that before. No one had ever made me feel like I was worth something more than just my family's expectations or a business deal. I felt myself trembling under his touch, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. For the first time, I let myself feel the weight of his words. Maybe I wasn't invisible. Maybe I wasn't as worthless as I'd been led to believe. "I'm not perfect," I whispered, almost to myself. "I've made mistakes. I've hurt people." "You're human," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You're allowed to make mistakes. It's what makes you real, Savannah. What matters is that you learn from them. You're not your past. You're not the person who's been rejected and humiliated. You're someone who has the power to change. And you don't have to do it alone." His words felt like a lifeline, but I didn't know if I was ready to grab onto it. My whole life, I had been alone. I had convinced myself that I didn't need anyone. But now, standing here, with Bash's hands still cupping my face, I wasn't so sure. "I don't know if I can let go of the past," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." Bash's hands slid to my shoulders, pulling me gently toward him. "You don't have to let go all at once. But you don't have to carry that fear by yourself anymore." I looked up at him, searching his face for any hint of insincerity. But there was none. His gaze was unwavering, filled with sincerity, warmth, and something else, something deeper. "I'm here, Savannah," he said quietly. "And I'm not going anywhere." After that moment, everything felt different. It wasn't a sudden shift, but more like a gentle unraveling. Bash had given me something I didn't know I needed, the space to be vulnerable, to admit that I was afraid, that I wasn't perfect, and that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to be. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. But that didn't mean I wasn't still terrified. Bash had given me a choice. I could stay here, with him, in a life that was so different from everything I had known. Or I could walk away, take the safe route, and stay in my familiar pain. But for the first time, I wasn't sure which choice was the right one. It wasn't easy to let go of the past. I had spent so many years building walls around my heart, making sure no one could hurt me again, that I had forgotten how to let someone in. Bash was trying to show me a different way, but I wasn't sure I was ready to take that leap. But each day, as he patiently waited for me to make the choice, I could feel the weight of my past slowly starting to loosen. It wasn't going to be a quick fix. It was going to take time. And maybe, just maybe, I would learn to trust again. It was a week after our conversation on the beach when I found myself alone in the kitchen, the sun filtering in through the windows as I prepped dinner. Mrs. Chin had gone home for the day, and Bash was out with one of his business associates, leaving me to my thoughts. The kitchen was peaceful, almost serene, a place where I could focus and find a semblance of normalcy. I had always loved to cook. It was one of the few things that made me feel grounded, like I was doing something just for myself. Something simple, something I could control. As I sliced vegetables and stirred the pot on the stove, I let my mind wander, but it kept circling back to Bash. The more I thought about him, the more I realized how much he had changed my life. I had spent so much time afraid of change, afraid of what letting someone else in would mean, that I hadn't allowed myself to see what I was really missing. Bash wasn't perfect. But he was the first person in my life who had ever made me feel like I mattered. Like I wasn't just some afterthought or a pawn in someone else's game. He saw me. Really saw me. And that scared the hell out of me. "Smells good," came his voice from the doorway, interrupting my thoughts. I looked up to see Bash standing there, his expression unreadable as he leaned against the doorframe. I gave him a small smile, feeling the usual flutter in my chest when he looked at me. It's nothing fancy. Just something to pass the time. You've been here a week, he said, stepping into the room and closing the distance between us. And still, you cook like you're trying to hide from something. It's like you're keeping yourself busy to avoid thinking about what's happening here. His words struck a nerve. I turned away, trying to mask the tension in my shoulders. I'm not hiding from anything. You don't have to do this alone, Bash said, his voice softer now. He moved closer, standing behind me, and I could feel his presence like a weight in the room. Whatever it is that's holding you back, you don't have to carry it on your own anymore. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't want to cry. Not again. But it was hard to stop the emotion that threatened to spill over. You don't get it, Bash, I said quietly, my voice shaky. I've spent my entire life trying to make sure I don't need anyone. I thought I could handle everything on my own. And now I don't even know who I am without these walls around me. He stepped closer, his hand gently resting on my arm, his touch warm and grounding. You're not the walls you've built, Savannah, he said softly. You're more than that. You've always been more. I closed my eyes, willing myself to steady my breathing. It was so hard to let go of. That control. To trust that someone could actually want me for who I was, and not just what they thought I could offer. I don't know if I'm ready to let them go, I whispered. Bash didn't say anything for a moment. He didn't pressure me, didn't tell me what I should be doing. He simply stood there, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body, but not so close that it felt overwhelming. He was giving me the space to breathe, to think. You don't have to be ready today, he said quietly. I'm not asking for everything all at once. I just want you to know that when you are ready, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere, Savannah. And I'm not going to give up on you. I opened my eyes and looked up at him, the words sinking in. His eyes were steady, filled with an unwavering sincerity that made my heart ache. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it real trust. Trust that wasn't built on promises, but on actions. I swallowed, my emotions still a jumble, but something in me shifted. I don't know how to let go of the past. It's not easy. No one's asking you to forget it, he said, his voice low and reassuring. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. You don't have to be afraid of what's next. His words felt like a balm to the raw, aching places inside of me. I didn't have to be afraid. Not anymore. For the first time in my life, I realized that maybe I didn't have to do everything on my own. And maybe, just maybe, it was okay to lean on someone else. Later that evening, after dinner, we went out onto the balcony overlooking the ocean. The sky was painted in shades of pink and purple as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the water. The breeze was cool, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore was peaceful, almost soothing. Bash leaned against the railing, his hands tucked in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I joined him, standing beside him, but not quite touching. For a moment, we were both silent, just letting the moment wash over us. Thank you, I said finally, my voice quiet. Bash looked over at me, raising an eyebrow in question. For everything, I clarified, feeling a warmth spread through me. For not giving up on me. For being patient. He gave me a small smile. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. Not when I know there's something worth fighting for. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and true. And for the first time, I believed them. Over the next few weeks, things began to feel a little more normal. Bash and I spent time together, talking, getting to know each other in ways that went beyond the surface. I started to see him not just as the powerful, dangerous man I had first met, but as someone who was just as vulnerable as I was. We spent our days talking about business, about my bakery ideas, about our pasts, about what we wanted in the future. There were still moments of tension, moments when my fear of opening up resurfaced, but they didn't last long. Bash was always patient, always there, and slowly, I began to let go. I wasn't perfect. Neither was he. But maybe that was the point. We didn't need to be perfect. We just needed to be real. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to be exactly that. Here is the final part of the story, concluding Savannah and Bash's journey with resolution and growth, bringing their emotional arc to a satisfying end. It had been months since that moment on the beach, since Bash had first walked into my life and turned it upside down. I could still remember the confusion, the fear, the overwhelming sense of being out of control. But now, everything felt different. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was real. I had learned how to trust again. I had learned how to lean on someone, and more importantly, how to be there for myself. Bash had given me that. Not just his protection or his patience, but his willingness to wait for me to be ready. He never pushed me, never tried to rush me into something I wasn't ready for. He allowed me to take things at my own pace, to find my own strength. And in doing so, I found the courage to face my past. To let go of the guilt, the shame, the fear. To accept that what had happened to me didn't define me. It was a part of me, yes, but it wasn't all of me. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. The night of our wedding was here. It wasn't like the wedding I had once dreamed of. There were no grand chandeliers or massive crowds. Instead, it was intimate, simple, and incredibly personal. We had chosen a small, private venue by the ocean, surrounded by a handful of our closest friends and family. It felt right. Everything about it felt like it was finally mine, not a product of anyone else's expectations. Bash stood at the altar, his dark eyes fixed on me as I walked toward him, my heart pounding in my chest. His gaze never wavered, and I could feel every inch of his devotion, every bit of the love he had shown me since the day we met. He had been my rock, my protector, but most of all, he had been my partner, my equal. As I reached him, I could see the emotion in his eyes. Something raw, something vulnerable that he didn't often show. He took my hands in his, and the world seemed to slow down. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the two of us, standing there together. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I smiled, my heart swelling with affection. "So do you." The ceremony was short, but the vows we exchanged were from the heart. I promised to stand by him, to support him, to love him through all of life's ups and downs. And he promised to protect me, to cherish me, to never let me go. The weight of those words settled in my chest, and I realized that this wasn't just a promise. It was a commitment, one that would shape the rest of our lives together. The reception that followed was even more intimate. We danced barefoot on the sand, the sound of the waves crashing in the background, the stars above us shining like diamonds. It wasn't the wedding I had imagined years ago, but it was better. It was ours. As I looked around at the people who had come to celebrate with us, I realized how far I had come. From the woman who had been rejected at the altar, humiliated in front of everyone she knew, to the woman standing here, married to the man who had saved her, who had seen her for who she truly was. I wasn't invisible anymore. And neither was he. Bash pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me as we swayed together, lost in the moment. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I leaned my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. More than I ever thought I could be. He kissed the top of my head, his hand resting on my back, the touch both comforting and possessive. "I'm happy too. I never thought I'd find someone who could make me feel this way. But you, Savannah, you've changed everything for me." I pulled back slightly to look up at him, my hands resting on his chest. "We've both changed," I said softly. "And we're going to keep changing together." He smiled, a smile that was both gentle and full of promise. "I'll never stop loving you, Savannah. I'll never stop fighting for you." Months later, we stood in the quiet of our new home, the ocean stretching out before us, the sun casting a golden glow over everything. It was our sanctuary, a place where we could finally breathe, a place where the past no longer held us captive. I was starting to build my bakery, just like I had always dreamed. With Bash's help, I had secured the perfect location and the resources I needed. He had supported me every step of the way, believing in me even when I doubted myself. And as the bakery opened its doors to the first customers, I knew this was just the beginning. Bash was still the same man I had married, strong, powerful, a protector. But now he was also my partner in every sense of the word. We made decisions together, We faced challenges together, and we celebrated every victory together. One afternoon, after a particularly successful day at the bakery, we walked down to the beach, hand in hand. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange hue over the water, and I felt at peace. "I can't believe we're here," I said, my voice full of wonder. "It feels like everything has finally fallen into place." Bash squeezed my hand, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It has. And it's only going to get better from here." "I'm with you, Savannah. Always." I smiled up at him, my heart full. Always. And as the waves crashed against the shore, I realized that I had found something more beautiful than I ever thought possible. Someone who loved me for who I was, who saw past my flaws and mistakes, and who had given me the chance to love myself. Together, we had built a life that was ours. A life that, no matter what came our way, we would face together. A life filled with love, trust, and the promise of forever. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.